When I made the Charlotte Flair video about a month ago saying that her road to 17 it's a joke, it's predictable, it's lame, boring, all of that kind of stuff, what I was really wanting to say was that Charlotte, it's forced, it's unorganic, a lot of this, it's so WWE forcing women down your throat, like taking a women's evolution/revolution that feels organic when you have stuff like Bayley, Sasha at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 1, or when Becky Lynch had her nose broken, and the crowd reaction she was getting around that time period, and taking organic stuff and just shoving it down your throat to a point where you don't want to see it anymore. That was what the Charlotte video was about. And this Becky Lynch video, it's going to be about very much the same thing, because Becky Lynch, ever since she came into the WWE, she was never the main talent, but ever since 2018, when her momentum got going, and you hit 2019, she won those 2 championship belts, which you can see on screen now. Ever since then, at WrestleMania 35 going forward, it's felt so unorganic, so unnatural, so hard to connect with. They've just tried. The company, I don't know whether it's they've tried too hard, or it's just how they do things in World Wrestling Entertainment from a creative perspective. Like, some of this stuff they've done with Becky Lynch, how they've booked her, how they've booked her competition. I mean, some of the stuff she's done in the year-long title reign she's had with the Raw Women's title, some of it's been cool, some of it, nothing to do with Lacey Evans was cool. That whole thing was garbage. The stuff with Becky Lynch against Sasha Banks, that was really good. I enjoyed that. But Becky Lynch versus Natalya at SummerSlam, Becky Lynch versus Shayna Baszler against Bayley at Survivor Series, Becky Lynch and Charlotte versus the Kabuki Warriors, and that main eventing TLC. And then the stuff with Shayna Baszler now is alright. Like, her reign's been it's been so-so. But it's not really just that. This is more about the women's evolution/revolution and how it's progressed in World Wrestling Entertainment, and how Becky Lynch feels like she's just so much better than everyone else for some reason. I don't know where this is coming from. On the mic, she's decent to good. In the ring, she's alright. Like, I just don't see it anymore. Like, granted, in that time period, late 2018, early 2019, when the women were firing on all cylinders, in that time period, the women well and truly deserved to have their own pay-per-view with Evolution. They deserved to main event those shows, TLC 2018 especially, getting all those opportunities that they were, because they were the most exciting part of the show during that time period. Now, granted, I wasn't watching, but I've caught myself back up on all that stuff, okay? From after SummerSlam 2018 through WrestleMania 35, the women, Ronda Rousey, Becky, Charlotte, Asuka, those 4 women were the best parts of the show, because the men were doing nothing in late 2018, early 2019. Like, what were the men doing? That was Bryan and AJ Styles, which was great. And then what? What was Seth Rollins against Dean Ambrose in an awful feud, because Reigns had to vacate the title due to leukemia, and then they had nothing. So, the women's division was the best part of the show at that point. And how did that come about? What happened with that? So, we go back to when the women's revolution really started. It's really just, with WWE, it's like, was there a distinct point? Was there? I mean, in my eyes, it was when Bayley and Sasha had that incredible match at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 1. When Bayley and Sasha stepped into the ring for the NXT Women's Championship, co-main event of that TakeOver Brooklyn show, which was main evented by Owens and Balor, I believe. But when they got into the ring at that show, the whole thing just, it was so great. Everything about Bayley and Sasha Banks, it set apart the Revolution, or the Evolution, whatever. I'm just going to call it the Evolution. But it set apart the women's evolution. It really did. That match put the women on the show, on the map. Because before that, going even further back, Paige was the one who really did this. When she came in and, her and AJ Lee were the only, non-total divas, as it was just the Bella Twins and Alicia Fox and all these other just fake, horrible wrestlers, and, I don't know. So, yeah, Paige and AJ started it, really, and then you got to Sasha and Bayley at Brooklyn, and then going forward from that, you had that awful Team PCB, Team Bellas, Team Bad, or Team Black Women. That's basically what it was. I'm going to keep saying that because they just threw the women of color into a stable because it's World Wrestling Entertainment. That's what we do. But anyway, they moved on from that to just nothing in 2015 or late 2015. 2016, they brought the Women's Championship in to replace the Divas Championship. Becky Lynch, the woman who I'm just, dedicating this video to, or dedicating to, that makes it sound like it's a tribute video. Whatever. The woman I'm talking about in this video, Becky Lynch, took on Sasha Banks and took on Charlotte in a match for the inaugural, the second coming of the Women's Championship. They had a match for that. Charlotte won. Becky, she was like the third wheel of that match. Sasha Banks, she was great in that match. So much so that when Snoop Dogg performed her theme song when she came out, Snoop Dogg got put into the celebrity wing of the Hall of Fame for that. Anyway, we got that match with Becky Lynch. And after that, Becky Lynch was, like, could you tell me one thing Becky Lynch did between then and, like, 2018? No, you can't, because what did she do? I remember she was on SmackDown having, like, not meaningless feuds, but she was lost in the shuffle. But there was nothing special about Becky Lynch. She was right in that middle of the pack territory. I remember she had a match at Elimination Chamber 2017 against Mickie James. She was having matches against just, your Carmellas, your Naomis on SmackDown. She'd have a match against Charlotte occasionally. Becky Lynch held the SmackDown Women's title at one stage, but nothing she did was really that super notable, super like, oh my god, Becky Lynch is on the screen, I need to see this. Nothing she did was like that, and just like with most wrestlers, that's down to creative. I'm not blaming that fully on Becky Lynch, but Becky was never someone who she was never someone who made the material, the crap material she was given by creative, into something that I just had to see, And it's people who can do that really elevate themselves to an upper tier. Now, in a lot of cases, the creative material is just so bad that you can't elevate it. But in some cases, the very few great ones in this business can do that. Becky really couldn't. So you get to a point through 2016, 17, and you hit 2018. Now, 2018, Ronda Rousey comes into the World Wrestling Entertainment Company. Royal Rumble, she makes her debut, storms out at the end of the Women's Rumble match, points at the sign as she's staring down Alexa Bliss, Charlotte, and Asuka. She points at the WrestleMania 34 sign, just points at it and then walks off. So Ronda Rousey joins the company. Charlotte, by this point, is probably a 6, 7-time champion. They're really racking up the title reigns with her. Asuka's the most dominant woman on the planet. She hasn't lost for 3 years by this point, or 2.5 years. So that's where you're at the women's division. Becky's nowhere to be found. She's just on a kickoff battle royal. Literally, Becky Lynch is on the WrestleMania 34 battle royal. Meanwhile, Ronda Rousey was in the mixed tag match with Kurt Angle against Triple H and Stephanie. Charlotte Flair beat Asuka's undefeated streak to retain the SmackDown Women's title, which that was a god-awful decision. And then that was that. So, coming out of that, also at WrestleMania 34, you had that great Alexa Bliss Nia Jax bullying match, which that was god-awful. So, coming out of 34, Becky Lynch floundered through the middle of 2018, and then she got the match against Charlotte at SummerSlam. This was the BS ending, I believe, and Becky just snapped. Charlotte went to, show Becky respect, or, mockingly. Becky just snapped. The crowd went nuts. Becky was really over for that. I remember that distinctively. Becky just beating up Charlotte at SummerSlam. Becky, she'd had enough. She put a line in the sand. She put her foot down to all of this being held down and whatnot, and the crowd bought into it, which was good. It's an organic, nice babyface story. An organic reaction. That's what I want to see. I don't want to see these incredibly forced, stuff that the company forces, which I'll talk about in the coming minutes. It's just so, unorganic, so fake, so hard to connect with. So, Becky Lynch organically got over. Meanwhile, Ronda Rousey won the Raw Women's title. The SmackDown Women's title was being held by Charlotte? Yeah, this is the Charlotte-Becky thing. So that was the situation. You're rolling through the pay-per-views. Hell in a Cell, Charlotte and Becky have another match, which was great. You also have Ronda Rousey. She got a successful defense at that show. So you move into Evolution. October 2018. The women by this point are by far the best thing on the show. Nothing the men are doing are as good as the women. So the women's evolution is really feeling genuine, organic, interesting, exciting. It's the best thing on the show. I have absolutely no issue with it main eventing these shows because it's the most captivating and interesting thing they're doing on the shows. So, you get Evolution. A really entertaining show. It felt fresh, it felt different. The venue for it could have been better, I'll say that. It felt like it was a little live event. So they could have made the staging look better, but the whole show itself had a great feel. Everything about it felt historic. Was it a little bit forced? Yes, but everything with the Women's Revolution was forced in some way or another. Nothing felt truly organic. Charlotte Flair being the main thing that felt forced. Charlotte is literally the face of their evolution, and she feels forced to a point where it's not natural. It's ridiculous how much Charlotte's forced down your throats. So Charlotte Flair being the face of it, then all the other stuff, the women's evolution, like them just main eventing shows that they didn't deserve to, like when the women just main event Raw shows, and you can tell they're not the best part of the show, but they're forcing them into the main event because, well, it's an evolution. We've got to be politically correct somehow. Like, that kind of stuff I never liked. So, with Becky Lynch, you get to Evolution 2018. The incredible last woman standing match versus Charlotte Flair. This I've nothing bad to say about. No matter what I'll slate the two women for later on in the year that would come. But this match itself at Evolution, amazing. 30 minutes, incredible last woman standing match, phenomenal. Becky Lynch wins, keeps the SmackDown Women's Championship. Ronda Rousey defeats Nikki Bella to retain the Raw Women's Championship in the main event. So really by this point, Becky Lynch, she's very over. She really is. She's got the championship. Everything feels organic, natural, cool. Then you roll into Survivor Series. We're supposed to get a champion versus champion match. Becky Lynch, Ronda Rousey. This was going to be epic, but it never ended up happening. Nia Jax punched Becky Lynch on the Go Home Raw, and, well, we got the visual of Becky Lynch standing there, arms both to her sides. Becky Lynch's nose is just a bloodied mess, because Nia Jax is just a botching machine on legs. So you have Becky Lynch bleeding out of her nose, and ever since then, really, the organic nature to Becky Lynch kind of went downhill. Now, the WrestleMania season stuff was fine. It was good. I enjoyed it. It had a spot. It was memorable. It was exciting to an extent. But ever since this broken nose thing, which in Becky Lynch will look back on that moment as the moment her career went up to another notch. I look at it as the moment Becky Lynch's career got ruined by creative, because ever since then, the creative team felt the need to force everything Becky did. And it just felt unnatural. So you get TLC 2018, the incredible Asuka, Charlotte, Becky main event. Another awesome women's main event. They were, absolutely killing it at this time period. Royal Rumble 2019, the second women's Rumble match. But first, Asuka versus Becky. Asuka won the women's title from SmackDown, so that was great. Ronda Rousey and Sasha Banks had a Raw women's title match. Like, all these women's matches were just great. You got the women's Rumble match. Becky, forced her way into the match, won the women's Rumble, and then they did the stuff where Vince McMahon, suspended her because Becky thought she was bigger than the company, which is such a dumb thing to suspend someone for. But anyway, so you do the suspension. In the end, you get to WrestleMania 35, that big main event. Becky, Ronda, Charlotte Flair, women's championships, winners take all for the Raw Women's and SmackDown Women's title. Becky Lynch wins it all. And then from that moment, it all just fell off a cliff, really. That's the best way I can put it for Becky Lynch. The fact that there was no legit competition. The fact that the company was forcing her to a level that it wasn't natural. Okay, Becky Lynch, Rebecca Good, she's not someone who, when you're watching a wrestling show, screams greatest in the company. Okay, she can work hard for that. Anyone can work hard for that. Okay, that's all good. But the fact of the matter is, the pro wrestling business, some people are meant for it, some are not. Now, this is the same thing is said for people like CM Punk and Daniel Bryan and kayfabe storylines to make it feel better when they win the big moment. But as far as a long-term main event star, was that Becky Lynch? And the answer is no. And Becky Lynch, in her own mind, because of the position the company put her in, she thinks now that she's genuinely the face of the company, the face of Raw, the best thing, and it's like, Rebecca Good, you're not. I hate to break it to you. I'm not trying to be just a hater, but when you look at this company, you can't argue with the fact that Brock Lesnar is by far the face, and then after that, it's probably Drew McIntyre. They're trying to make Drew the next best. Meanwhile, on SmackDown, it's The Fiend, Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt's character is the best thing. And then they're trying to make Reigns, but Reigns is just a mid-carder who they've pushed in the main event for 6 years, who's been a heel because of it. So that's the situation as far as the faces of the company. The women, so to speak, no one is turning on Raw anymore to watch Becky Lynch, okay? When the women were in this revolution phase, People were turning on Raw to see Ronda Rousey, then Charlotte and Becky to an extent, and then everything else just came after that. Okay? Ronda Rousey is the top face of the women's part of the show. Becky Lynch is a tier below that, and in place of all the current superstars and everyone on the show, it's like Brock, and then if Ronda's there, it's Ronda, and then Becky's like 4th, 5th tier. Okay? People aren't turning on Raw anymore to watch Becky Lynch. That's the fact of the matter. Becky Lynch, because of this reign she's had, where she's been Becky 2 belts, which felt incredibly forced, and the fact that Becky's now the top dog on Raw, or so she thought, they were trying to force that, it just felt so unorganic. You had the stuff at Money in the Bank 2019, Becky defended the Raw Women's Championship against Lacey Evans, defended the SmackDown 1 against Charlotte Flair, she retained against Lacey Evans in a 6-minute match, then she lost the title to Charlotte Flair after a bunch of BS, then Bayley cashed in, so Bayley and Charlotte Flair pissed off to SmackDown, so that's what we got there. Meanwhile, Becky Lynch on Raw was aligning with Seth Rollins. That Rollins thing really was another nail in Becky Lynch's coffin. When they were doing that TV, real life to TV romance, they were bringing Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins' real life romance to real TV. Bringing what's Rollins' real name? Kobe Lopez. So bringing Kobe Lopez and Rebecca Good's personal real life relationship onto TV as Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins. It was unorganic as hell. It was so forced. It was hard to sit through. It just wasn't genuine. It felt so just fake. I know that they are really together in real life, but putting them on TV and the way they did it was so bad. And it made Becky Lynch go from the man conquering Ronda and Becky at WrestleMania to Seth Rollins, who he was garbage in himself as the top face. It took Becky from that top point of WrestleMania to Seth Rollins' girlfriend, or Rollins was Becky's boyfriend. It just was a mess. It really was. And you had the stuff Extreme Rules where Lacey and Corbin took on Rollins and Lynch, and by this point I was done with Becky Lynch. Already, this was 3 months after WrestleMania, and I was sick of her, because at that program with Rollins, Corbin, and Lacey, it was so bad. And then you had the stuff with Natalya at SummerSlam, which the only time they've brought Natalya into a prominent storyline on TV since her father, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, passed away, was for SummerSlam 2018. And what was that? Why was that even there? That was there so that Natalya could say that she's fighting for Jim, and that was her only storyline in the past year and a half. Pathetic. So Becky Lynch rolls in the feud with Sasha Banks. This, genuinely, it was actually really good stuff. If they did stuff like this with Sasha Banks more often, or they actually established women on the show to a point where they could be as legit as Sasha Banks, then Becky's reign would have meant more, it would have felt less forced. The Sasha stuff felt actually interesting. Granted, Sasha never really explained the full reason why she stormed out of the company, and Becky Lynch was playing up the fact that while Sasha was, sitting at home doing nothing, Becky was carrying the company. If you know the behind the scenes, it's because everything that was happening with Sasha Banks' booking, but anyway, so that was the situation there. And then they had the matches at Night of Champions, Hell in a Cell. They were the best matches on the show. So you roll into Survivor Series. The NXT invasion happens. Becky Lynch is having this match in the triple threat main event, Shayna Baszler and Bayley. I can see why they main evented with it, but the women just were a disappointment in the main event. And the women claiming that because they're women, they're held up to a higher standard in the main event. No, I'm going to hold up a main event to a main event standard. If it's a main event, I want to see either a great match, a great moment, something cool, something that warrants a main event closure to a pay-per-view. This is Survivor Series. I don't need to see a 20-minute, drawn-out, slow, boring, nothing match featuring 3 women who none of them really looked like they wanted to be there. It was just a mediocre match. So you go from that, and then you go to TLC, where this Becky Lynch character who, because of the Lacey Evans, Seth Rollins, Baron Corbin stuff in the guts of the year, because of this stuff they did with Natalya at SummerSlam that was whatever, because of this triple threat match in the Survivor Series main event, now when you get to TLC and you have a garbage 27-minute TLC match with the Kabuki Warriors and Charlotte Flair in a tag team women's title match, when you get to that, I just couldn't care less. And coinciding with that, everything Becky Lynch does on Raw, Like, all she was doing on Raw was either fighting Charlotte or teaming with Charlotte to fight the Kabuki Warriors for like 3 months. Becky on TV was doing nothing. She was cutting like the man promos where she like licks her lips between lines. Like, it's just boring. And then, I mean, you get through that TLC match where Charlotte throws Kairi Sane into the barricade. Sane falls headfirst onto the concrete. 5 minutes in, so the match is a dud. And then from there, Becky at the Rumble, she has the stuff with Asuka. The Asuka stuff is fine. And now she's feuding with Shayna Baszler. And Shayna Baszler is totally outcalling Becky Lynch in every regard. Shayna Baszler is cool, fresh, exciting, interesting, organic, feels genuinely cool, not changing who she is to fit a political agenda. And that's all Becky Lynch has done. It feels like she's changed who she is to fit a political agenda. Now, as much as that might not be true, that's the vibe you get from watching Becky Lynch on TV. Okay? Becky Lynch naturally is not this Stone Cold Steve Austin type. She was, for a certain point, in 2018, but they forced that upon you. The WWE has forced you to feel that way about Becky Lynch, and it feels unorganic, it feels uninspiring, it feels bland. And so now we've got a Becky Lynch who, she's held the Raw Women's Championship for 11 months straight. She's held that title and really held it hostage at certain points, because outside of that Sasha Banks program lasted for 2 months, it's been just dire. And that's down to creative. That's down to the division not being good. But Becky herself cutting these man promos, which I know she's reciting a script that probably Vince wrote, but even still, I blame Vince. I blame Rebecca Good. It's just not great stuff. It's not good stuff, pardon the pun. Like, it's just not captivating. So we get that Becky Lynch character doing that, and at the end of the day, it's just ruined her. Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins, after WrestleMania, need to take an hiatus. I heard that was a rumor of something that could happen. It really does need to happen. Let them, have their break, get their debrief, their detox from Raw Wrestling Entertainment. Give them 2 months off, 3 months, so we can rinse our palates of them for a while. Then we can build up the Raw Women's division around Shayna Baszler and all the women around that. From there, Becky can return. They can have the program at SummerSlam. That's what you do with Becky Lynch. Bring Becky Lynch back feeling different. Don't bring her back as this same man character. We don't need to see Becky as the man, okay? We don't need to see Becky as the political activist who's saying that degendering championships is the way to go, okay? That video that I made was just all me ranting about Becky Lynch, because that whole degendering championships thing was so politically forced, so just hateable. Stuff like that doesn't need to be said. It doesn't need to be done. It's forced. They tried in NXT and it lasted 2 weeks. Now the NXT Women's Championship's back to being the NXT Women's Championship, not the NXT Championship. So that's the video. Becky Lynch, her whole thing, it was genuine, it was natural, it felt fine, and then they just forced it upon you to a point where you didn't want to see it anymore. So that's Becky Lynch. That's the women's evolution, revolution, whatever. It's like, it's natural, and then they force it upon you, and then you don't want to see it. That's how WWE does the women's revolution, and how they've done it. And yeah, that's the video. Hopefully you enjoyed. Be sure to like, comment, sub. Leave down below what you think about this. See ya.